Uh, and now, ladies and gentlemen, we move on with our next session, which is the launch of the report for our research study, Early Stage Climate Tech Startups in India, Investment Landscape 2021. As the ecosystem builder, IIC has been tracking the investment landscape of impact investing for some time. And what we have realized is that in the last 4 to 5 years, there has been a greater volume of investments in the climate tech segment. So to dive deeper into this sector, IIC has brought together partners like Climate Collective and Arete Advisors for this ground-up study of early-stage equity deals focused on climate tech innovations in India. And our larger aim is that this should help the investors to understand the space a little better and also to provide a narrative and framework that can help drive climate-related startup investments become mainstream in India. I don't want to steal the thunder from the report release. And let me now quickly introduce the authors to the report as well as the panel who will share the key learnings and insights from the report. I'd like to introduce Mr. Kalpesh Kada, who is the Senior Advisor with Impact Investors Council and has led this project beautifully. Kalpesh also advises ADB and is a member of the investment committee of Vivriti AIF. Prior to this, Kalpesh led the structured finance ratings team at ICRA and was also a member of ICRA's rating committee. I'd also like to introduce Mr. Nalin Agarwal. Nalin is the founding partner of the Climate Seeds Fund and partner Climate Collective Foundation. He has been in the clean tech space since 2010, first as a developer in the solar space till 2015, before moving the startup innovation support. I would also like to introduce Mr. Pratap Raju. Pratap Raju is the founding partner of the Climate Collective Network, a non-profit focused on unleashing the innovation and entrepreneurial talents of people in South Asia. Pratap Raju has been in the climate and clean tech space since 2019. I would also like to introduce Shraddha Vaid, who is the co-founder and partner at Arete Advisors. Arete Advisors LLP offers management consulting across various sectors, including healthcare, education and skills, food and agriculture, consumer and retail, and real estate. Without any further delay, would like to hand over to Kalpesh for this session. Over to you, Kalpesh.
Thank you, Ranjana, and a very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I wish to borrow a line from Prime Minister Modi's speech at the G20 summit in 2020, and here I quote, "Climate change must be fought not in silos, but in an integrated, comprehensive, and holistic way." In keeping with the spirit of this integrated action against climate change, and also in line with its mission of bringing the ecosystem together, IIC took up what could be a small but important step of trying to paint the investment landscape for early stage, innovation-oriented climate tech startups in India. But first of all, what are these climate tech startups really? Well, these are for-profit enterprises that are built on innovative technologies. Their goal is to develop products and services that help people in cutting their carbon footprint or help people in adapting and becoming more resilient to climate change. Many of these companies have the potential for some serious climate impact and also attractive financial returns for its investors. Therefore, the team of IIC, Climate Collective, and Arete Advisors used data and analytics to chronicle the investment flow into climate tech enterprises in India. We also interviewed more than 30 investors and a similar number of startup founders to dig into the story behind the numbers. Today, we are delighted to present to you the product of this grueling but rewarding journey of over 4 months. Ladies and gentlemen, the report on early stage climate tech startups in India, Investment Landscape 2021. Can you have that on screen, please? The report is now available for download. The link has been provided in the chat window. We do encourage you to download the report and do share the feedback with us. And now to hear more about the takeaways from this report, I hand it over to Shraddha, followed by Nalin and Pratap.
It's 2021 and I still haven't figured out how to unmute and mute myself on calls. Thank you so much for the introduction, Kalpesh. It's truly been a delight working with IIC and Climate Collective on this important and but very vast and complex space. We got to interact with some really wonderful organizations doing some extraordinary cutting edge work in the space, and also funders who are willing to back them. Through this report, we've tried to capture this moment in time of the Indian climate tech ecosystem. While the report discusses our findings and our insights in at great length, I will just walk you through some of the key highlights now. That India is acutely vulnerable to climate change, I think has been established beyond doubt. We are the third largest emitter of GHGs, and we rank seventh on the global climate risk index. I think there is an increasing recognition of a need for urgent climate action across stakeholders. And the recent IPCC report kind of highlighted the urgency and also how little time we have left to act on what needs to be done to shift the needle. I think what is different about this cycle of climate tech investing is the fact that there is an alignment across all stakeholders, such as whether it's regulators or policymakers, whether it's capital allocators and other ecosystem actors. And I think this is what truly distinguishes this wave from the clean tech boom a decade ago. This increased global interest has also percolated into India. And as a result, between 2016 and 2020, the space saw almost $1 billion of equity inflow across maybe 200 odd deals. And this was about 9% of the total impact flows into India. Some of the other factors that are driving traction is that we today have a large asset base in clean energy, which is spurring innovations both upstream and downstream to service upstream and downstream in the value chain to service some of these assets. And there's an increasingly innovative deal pipeline. It is, while the space is decent, and if I were to deconstruct a typical climate tech deal for you, it would be less than $1 million in size. It would be at the seed stage. And typically, entrepreneurs would have raised funding from maybe one round of funding, and one in two entrepreneurs would have raised institutional funding. There is, however, that being said, I think there are, in our analysis, we found more than 270 unique investors who have taken some or the other position in climate tech. There is a good mix of B2B and B2C businesses. And while 70% of the organizations are working with a strong product innovation, and I think that speaks to the deep tech or the hardware required for climate tech solutions that we heard repeatedly during our interactions with entrepreneurs and investors alike. That being said, the ecosystem is vibrant and has a variety of organizations that are working to solve for climate mitigation, adaptation, and resilience. What we found was that activity in India is clustered around 3 hubs: Bangalore, NCR, and Mumbai. And almost 86% of the equity has flowed into mitigation solutions. This is in line with global findings as well, where sustainable mobility and energy kind of have led the way. Mobility alone accounted for almost 50% of the investments made into clean tech over the last 5 years. I think, and the other thing that I think we discovered was that investment hypotheses were kind of well established for energy and sustainable mobility, but are still emerging for other sectors like natural resources, climate smart agriculture, circular economy, or even cross-cutting sector solutions. And we have, over the next 2 days, a lot of deep dives lined up for the audience in all of these sectors, where we will be discussing some of our findings at depth and also hearing from practitioners and investors on what has been their experience in working in these sectors. Now I will hand it over to Nalin and Pratap to give us a bird's eye view of both the outlook for the climate tech ecosystem and essentially what needs to happen for us to shift the needle on climate change. Over to you, Nalin.
Thank you, Shraddha. That was very well synthesized and summarized. So this is a slide that's talking about the outlook for various subsectors and sectors that we've identified in the climate space. So I'll just try and quickly go through each of them. So in energy, the kinds of solution that we expect to get investor backing over the next years, modernizing smart grids needs solutions that can help monitor and manage energy flow better. We need more energy efficiency solutions, and there's a strong push on hydrogen, as you may have recently heard. So those are the areas in energy that we found should get traction. In mobility, solutions around energy storage and management, shared and connected fleets for consumer, last mile, and corporate needs, charging infrastructure deployment and management, as well as new vehicle platforms, especially for commercial use. In climate smart agriculture, solutions that help reduce food losses or improve yield and reduce inputs. Also blended finance solutions to get efficient solutions to market, especially, for example, in cold chains, as well as alternative proteins, especially as societal demand for meat grows in India. On the environmental and natural resources sector, solutions around air pollution, water treatment and conservation are going to be increasingly seeing traction. We do need more carbon capture solutions in India, especially because we have a large industrial base and a huge thermal plant base. The good thing is there's no new thermal plants being announced in 2027, so that's a very good development piece for us. On the waste and circular economy side, we've seen investors prefer aggregation plays, asset-light plays, many that are solving basic problems in collection, segregation, reuse, or recycling. Right? And then we have a last sector classification that we call others, where we have data analytics plays. Now, these are companies that are solving for example, irrigation and input needs in agriculture, or water management, for example, predicting flooding, or even pollution mapping, right? And the final subsegment are advanced materials companies, which essentially lower life cycle impacts of various use cases. So that's on the outlooks. I'm going to hand it over to Pratap to talk about what is needed to build up the ecosystem, something that he has been working on for several years now. Over to you, Pratap. You're on mute.
All right, thank you. Before getting to what is needed, as Kalpesh mentioned, in addition to the research, we spoke to a lot of investors and startups, and here are some key findings. On the funding side, nearly 90% spoke about the challenges of scale due to challenges in funding, and about half felt that these funding challenges were worsened by stringent return expectations, perhaps because there is a special need in many clean tech areas for example, patient capital. Conversely, the general perception amongst GPs is that the risk return profile of deep tech, clean tech is not well suited for venture capital, and this is a gap that we need to solve. To bring these groups together, about half of investors felt the need to establish common taxonomy and more capacity building workshops. Now, on the technology side, startups have mentioned challenges around technology stabilization, operations, and manufacturing to scale. These are not unique challenges, of course, to clean tech, to any technology that requires manufacturing. It's a startup problem. Interestingly, only 6% of our startup support organizations, accelerators, incubators, are specifically geared to climate action, and even these don't always support deep tech solutions. And about half of founders also believe a regulatory nudge for greater climate action would be critical for this space. And my experience as a solar developer when I started in 2009, perhaps the solar space wouldn't be where we are today without the National Solar Mission as well. So I can understand that. Now the next slide. Now, going forward, how can we as a group, the people in this conclave and other key stakeholders, what can we do to mainstream climate tech? There are several needs. There's one is, of course, more capacity building, for example, amongst fund managers. This clean tech is a new space that does require more education, more understanding, more networks that need to be built. Do check out our masterclass tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock as part of this conclave. And there's need, for example, for more technical experts and mentor experts to come in and help on due diligence. Now, clean tech is a term that perhaps encompasses multiple industries, domains, technologies, et cetera. It's very hard for any group to have this network in place. As I mentioned earlier, we don't have many ESOs, enterprise support organizations. We do need more. Maybe more centers of excellence in specific key technology areas, industry, academic collaborations as well. Policy nudges, directed fiscal incentives in this clean tech space would support certain domains as well. When we get past to getting the first steps into the market, in our ecosystem, a large portion of clean tech startups are B2B. And corporates are often large buyers. So we do need more maybe interventions like showcases or challenges or panels to help aggregate corporate demand in key clean tech areas, and maybe government as acting as large first buyers to kickstart the demand in these areas as well. Now, finally, on the capital side, as I mentioned earlier, alluded, clean tech is different. It takes longer gestation period. The sales cycle, especially in B2B or B2G, is quite large. So maybe fund structures that have longer fund tenures, and in certain cases, grants and blended capital would support. Finally, maybe something that we are starting to see, as I mentioned, that corporates are key buyers in many sectors. Corporates and governments and others playing also the role of strategic capital providers may also enrich our ecosystem as well. So I think this is something that we can all do together. It requires partnerships and collaboration. Thank you. Over to you, Resta.
Thanks, Kalpesh, Nalin, Pratap, and Shraddha. This indeed is a much awaited and timely research study, and I'm sure all of us are going back a lot richer in insights on the climate tech landscape in India. It is very interesting to see climate tech observe greater action in recent times, and the work which needs to be put in by the ecosystem collectively to help this space scale. So thanks a lot. I think all of us are going to download a copy of that and read it in our leisure time.